Okay.
Well, we are at that time. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Brian Geezy,
Present.
Doug Houston,
Present.
David Schmidt, Brian Hunt, absent, Pat Rashevsky, present.
Okay, at this time, please stand if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to thank everybody for being here this evening, and I'd like to take just a moment and I'd like to reflect upon, the happenings over the last week with regards to some of the tragedies that happened down in Florida, not just in Florida but other states as well. But I'd like us just to think about those families, those students, and the people that have been affected, and they're in our thoughts and prayers. And it's not, it's we just need to think about those folks and take just a moment of silence and think about those folks. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to do a virtue card reading. Do we have one in mind?
Yes, we do. We have trust tonight. Trust is having faith in someone or something. It is a positive attitude about life. You are confident that the right thing will happen without trying to control it or make it happen. Even when difficult things happen, trust helps us to find the gift or lesson in it. You are practicing trust when you believe there is some good in everything that happens. Look for the lessons in painful experiences. Let trust take away your worries. Know that your best is good enough. Trust others unless you have good reasons not to. Don't nag, worry, or try to take control. You are showing affirmation when you are, I am trusting. I have no need to control others. I release fear and worry. I feel at peace and know I am not alone.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you very much.
Good read.
Guidelines. The Board of Education developed these guidelines that dictate our conduct. With an open mind, we will establish an atmosphere that allows expression of all views, even when views are not in line with all members, being respectful of time. We will work collaboratively with the district administrator by having open and honest conversations around district priorities. We will work collaboratively with all stakeholders to monitor key indicators so that equitable teaching and learning results in high achievement. We will work toward building a trusting environment where both students and staff can reach their full potential and celebrate success in academics, the arts, and athletics.
Thank you.
And at this time, I'd like to open the floor up to public comments. With public comments, just as a reminder, we as a board, we can listen. We may ask questions, but we're not able to discuss items that that are not on the agenda in detail. We can take them under further consideration. But at this time, I welcome any public comments, please. Yes, sir. And if you could, just for the camera, stand right next to Nick over there.
Over here?
Yeah. And the one that
See if I can squeeze through.
the one that got on you is right behind Doug here.
All right,
So,
that'll work.
thank you. And if just for the rest of your names, sir.
Scott Schultz.
Scott, thank you.
All right, I wrote down some kind of my thoughts. I'll try and go slow so I don't get tongue-tied. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for your time and the opportunity to speak. My name is Scott Schultz. I attended Nekoosa schools. I've had each of my 4 children attend Nekoosa schools. With the recent tragedy in Florida, and at Sandy Hook or Columbine for that matter, I'd like to ask the board, are we doing everything we can to protect our kids? I'm aware and in fact pleased with the locking of the doors and buzzing of people in during, before, and after school hours. Is that enough? The use of metal detectors has been in practice at airports, stadiums, and government buildings for quite some time. Why would we not protect our children with the same tools we protect our airports and government officials? Also, I understand that Nekoosa has just one officer for 3 schools. Police are an invaluable tool to protecting our kids, but one officer for 3 schools is not enough and frankly not fair to that officer to be spread so thin. Also, there are approximately 380,000 unemployed veterans at any time in this country, and a veteran commits suicide every hour. That's an approximation, of course. As a veteran myself, I would say about 80% of these suicides are from a feeling of not having a purpose in life after serving. What better way to give a purpose to these veterans than to let them protect our kids? These are just a few of my thoughts, and I felt like we keep hearing see something, say something. Well, I see an opportunity to go further to protect our kids, and I'm saying something. I leave the ball in your court.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions of the board? And I would ask one question, Scott.
Sure.
When you reference, are you asking that the school may involve the veterans? And
I'm just, yeah, I guess
Okay.
I am. I
Okay.
mean, I know the school Nekoosa can't make a decision to put armed guards in a school. I understand that. It's gotta be a state thing, whatever. I'm just throwing it out there for you guys to be aware that, there's options. I mean, there's a lot of options. Understandably, every option costs money, but I find it hard to believe that taxpayers wouldn't be 100% behind protecting our kids.
thank you, Mr. Schultz. And, everybody in this room, it weighs heavily on our, we think about this daily. And we are fortunate to have such a fine officer. Where is he? Mr. Cole, Officer Cole. I gotta look for the bald guys in the room, and I got one other one over there.
You had to look further.
We are very fortunate, and I'm very proud of what our district has done, but indeed, this is something that will be under further consideration, and there will be forthcoming action. So, thank you.
And Scott, too, if you'd send an email with some of your other thoughts, because I think you just touched on some of your
I did.
thoughts. If you've got more details,
I didn't want to burn up a whole lot of your time. I actually put my name and address and phone number and stuff on here.
that'd be great. But send an email, too, with some of your
Sure.
other.
Sure, I can do that.
I'm very happy that we had some public input. I've been waiting for it, I think, for 10 months.
I was actually somewhat surprised I was the only one here, but.
Thank you for being here, and again, I want to recognize Officer Cole for the fine job that he does here at the district and working with our administrators and bringing us to the level that he challenges us every day. Thank you. And at this time, we're going to be working on communicating with the board, and there's going to be a presentation by Mr. Brian Grill.
Hi, how are you guys tonight?
Good. Thank you, Officer Colo and Mr. Schultz.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what I just wanted to share with you, I know I touched base on some of this last week with you guys, but I wanted to go over some of the points of the behavior portion of a multi-tiered system of support to go over with you and the community so they can hear some of the work that we're doing, but also talk to the point of what can the community expect as our next steps. So just to kind of review from last week, what is a multi-tiered system of support? A lot of you guys in past years have seen this similar triangle, like I mentioned last week, with response to intervention. The difference between response to intervention and a multi-tiered system of support is that response to intervention was just academics. A multi-tiered system of support is an umbrella that encompasses behavior and academics. And that's a part that we have been hearing a lot about is how are we going to support our kids through the behavior portion. But this kind of shows, this visual just shows that what we're doing universally with behavior should meet the needs of 80% of our students. And then 15% may be in need of some intervention, some assistance, and we want to progress monitor that. And then only about 5% of our students should be at that tier 3 where they really need some one-on-one attention, a behavior intervention plan or something like that to assist them as they go through their school day. So why are we looking into this? I mentioned to you last week, and I think we've all talked about, we've heard behavior as being a point of frustration for some people. And we want to do something different. We want to be proactive. We want to have a system that we can hold accountable to that says, here are practices that we believe are going to help students. How are we holding accountable? How are we monitoring the system within our school? And how are we providing training for our guest teachers, our new staff coming into our district? We want to have a system to what we do. And then the last part too, we want to provide that clarity, because I think a lot of times people ask, when do we go to that next step? And by creating that system, we'll know, oh, when do we go towards an intervention? When do we go towards a referral? When do we hit those points? And by laying it out in a multi-tiered system, a lot of those questions will be answered. Just so you know, this is not a new system. Like I said, people have heard and talked about response to intervention. People have talked about positive behavior intervention supports, PBIS. This is taking it and just creating a system around what we do. Two, this is gonna create consistency. We're working on this both at the elementary level, the middle school level, and that's gonna filter in the high school. But right now, this is a huge focus down at the elementary and middle school right now. And just to let you know, I've done research. I've talked to other directors in my position, and this is what their approach is in Wisconsin Rapids, in Boston, in Marshfield. They're all looking at this to set up a system to communicate not only with teachers and the board, but also to the community, to show them, hey, this is what we're doing to address it. We do have a system in place. Here's what it looks like. Now, the thing is too, just to kind of tie in some of the work that we've already done, a lot of community members, you as a board, teachers that have heard about responsive classroom, conscious discipline. Those are the practices that we are saying are our tier 1 for all students. So we have already started. Mr. Sprain shared with you last week. He did a self-assessment with his staff to see where they're at with some of those practices. That's all part of this multi-tiered system. We look at our data, we do process data and results data with the number of edu-climbers and referrals that we receive in the office. We look at all that as part of our tier 1 to say what's working, what's not working. But what we talk about after we create tier 1, because you want to put a lot of emphasis on that tier 1. Because if tier 1 is not a strong foundation, you're going to have a lot of kids filtering into that tier 2 and tier 3 because tier 1 is not meeting the needs of our students. So that's where a lot of our current work is going on. That's why last summer when the middle school had responsive classroom training, those are our efforts to build that strong tier 1 approach. After we build the supports around that, which is we have committees at both of the buildings having those conversations. After we figure out the supports for that, that's where we start talking about how do we know when it's not working for a student? And that's that transition piece. Is it number of referrals? Is it type of referrals? Is it by location? Within what period of time? Those are all discussions we begin to have to say, when does a kid need help? So that way we can plan it. But then we talk into, as we have that conversation, then we say, well, what do we do? We now know they need help, but what is it that we do? And that's where we then start talking interventions. And not just, okay, here's what we're gonna do, but how do we implement the intervention to know it's happening to fidelity? And then 2, how do we progress monitor to know that it is working for the kid? And what do we do if it doesn't? Those are all the conversations we're gonna keep having and keep working towards. And I know some of that is a repeat, but what I wanna now tell the community is just what can you expect as we go forward with this? So one of the things I am working on for our next district newsletter, I am putting together an article that explains a little bit about what a multi-tiered system of support is, and also how that is going to reach some of our diverse population, especially those experiencing trauma. The consistency of the approach and the commitment to some of those non-negotiables around behavior in our universal really does work with our students with trauma to know what they can expect. So I am creating an article that they can look forward to see how this may help a lot of our students. Also this year, we are working to not get rid of the social emotional handbook, but restructure it in the form of a multi-tiered system. So people can see how these supports will be committed to and how they will be evaluated as the year goes on. And that new handbook I plan to work on throughout the summer and make sure that a draft of it is ready to go by the fall. The other part too, we want to create a pamphlet that we can have at open house. We can have in our offices at the schools that parents can pick up and read, and have one both for the behavior side and for the academic side. Because we are doing work in both areas, but I want them to be able to see how are we supporting all of our students, because that's really what equity is. We're not doing the same approach for everyone. This allows us to do something different when a student needs it.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much. And I want to mention two things. First of all, I want to recognize you for the time and commitment that you've put in and working with our building administrators. And you referenced our conversations last week. I'd like to let the public know that on the Thursdays prior to the board meetings, when there are difficult and or challenging agenda items or process items coming up, that we have an open meeting, posted meeting, and we got together last week Thursday as a group, and we spoke for nearly 3 hours. And I want to thank you for your time. We as board members were able to ask questions, bring our relevant stakeholders' views into play, and you know, I found it to be, for me, the more I learn, the more effective ambassador I can be for the system. And that's where I want to be, is where I can say that, you know, we have this down. Our teachers understand it, our parents understand it, our students understand it. And the systems indeed do have rigor, and they work. And that meeting we had last week really got me to that point. And knowing and understanding we have much work left to do. But, you know, I don't know if any other board members want to comment on the way I left that meeting last week. I really felt empowered, and again, I want to thank you for the body of work. And that will segue into something else further down our agenda, the OE12 discipline. But I wanted to acknowledge that Thursday conversation and how it's intertwined with OE12 to a certain extent as we look at academics.
And that's why I wanted to give an update to you guys as well and the community, just to reiterate some of the points we talked about last week.
Very healthy, gentlemen, very healthy. Did you have the same feeling, gentlemen?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So do we want to move right into finishing up the OE12?
I think we need a break.
Okay.
What do you think?
Continue on this.
Look, I want to go right
Okay.
here. Yeah.
All right.
Let's get
it up.
Yep, we're gonna, thank you, Mr. Grohl.
Do you have any questions for me, or?
I really appreciate your time and the effort you put into this, and updates will be forthcoming, and yep, so thank you very much, Brian. At this time, Nicholas Niprath, student representative, the floor is yours, sir.
All right. Well, 4 things to go over. Chili for Charity happened this weekend. It was our largest event ever that I've known of. When I talked to Miss Kreider and Mrs. Bradle, it sounds like it's the largest it's been. We ran out of chili within about an hour, so we had to talk to the pig and get an emergency order in there. So I don't have the amounts that were raised due to the snow days, so hopefully I will have that next month for you. Student council is looking into dress code. That's the big thing that we're doing right now. It says in the student handbook that student council periodically look into it. In my 4 years, we've never even taken a glance, really. We found issues with the dress code that we want to address, including backpacks. Jackets are one thing that's listed, yet what is a jacket? What is a backpack? And I think that ties into school security well too. What can we do? So those are things we're looking into, and hopefully I'll have more information next month as we're in the process of talking to students and then staff. So ACT is next week, February 27th, so anything you want to add on that?
Here it comes.
Ready or not?
Get ready.
And then the musical preparations are being made. The musical is March 9th at 7 p.m. and March 10th at 7 p.m. and 2 p.m. And that's a Friday and a Saturday. So that's all I have. Any questions?
No questions from me. I wish you all the best on your ACTs. Don't let nerves get the best of you. Just
Yeah, absolutely.
just do your best.
Be wishing all those juniors well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll be thinking of them, and we appreciate your time.
And this year, one thing that I do want to just kind of add about on the 27th, we're actually going to be taking our sophomores to Midstate and to UWSP on campus tours. So we kind of clear out the building, and that's what the sophomores will be doing on that day.
Yeah, I was told there wasn't gonna be very many people at the high school on Tuesday, and I should cancel chess practice probably.
Sure.
I don't know, if there's
That's a
one
great
thing that could
idea,
get them
though.
to come back, it would be chess. So-
Thank you for doing that, working on
Yeah.
that.
That'll help
That's-
those juniors. Okay, next on the agenda, achievement gap reduction, just an informational update.
Sure, and that would be Humke, and that's me.
Okay,
For those who don't know, Achievement Gap Reduction, or AGR, is an agreement that we have with the DPI to help provide funding, reduce class numbers, bring in instructional coaches, and that's what we do at Humke. And one of the things that we've invested in is developing an instructional coach model, and that's really Jackie Hines who fills that void. And over the couple years that she's been in this role right now, we've been working on a number of things to help move the needle with kids in reading and learning. We focused on this past year, for the last calendar year, growing a process of looking at data through a data wall lens, and also bringing in a literacy model that involves an emphasis on language development, and also just helping kids be self-directed in their learning. With that, we track some data on our data wall, and then we also track just some regular data. And one of the things that I noticed right now is we had goals last year on our AGR form, and I compared it for last year with this year. Second and third grade, they tweaked their goals a little bit, and so you can't compare because they're different. But kindergarten and first grader are about the same goals. One of the things that did catch my eye is that we did drop in some reading goals right now in progress, and in asking my initial investigation on that, things that might be more related to an implementation dip having to do with intervention and how we're modeling and how that changed. Last year we had a period of time that it was designated for intervention. This year right now I'm thinking, okay, we're doing it differently. We have intervention, but it's built within our readers workshop, and from what we're thinking right now, we're not getting as many touches, and we think we have to investigate that more to kind of figure out how to improve upon that. So that's a little bit about what AGR is and how we're using it and where we're at.
fantastic. Is AGR kind of where SAGE has moved to?
Yes.
And very good.
SAGE
I
is its
think that's-
predecessor.
That was its predecessor, and we were able to kind of look at what we wanted to address,
Yes,
and literacy was our main
yes.
addresser. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Congratulations. It was a transition that occurred over the last 2 years,
Correct.
and so it's relatively new, and you've made some really great success. And
Thank you.
I know your team has been very dedicated to it, so thank you very much for your work on that.
Thank you, Brian.
It's important to the district. Academic Excellence Scholarship. At this time, we have to call for a motion to approve the Academic Excellence Scholarship recipient. Who is this individual? Who is this?
Victor Hoffmeister is the student
doing fine.
is coming before you for approval for the Academic Excellence Scholarship. He is intending to, well, committed to attending UW Eau Claire. So he is going to a UW school, which makes the Academic Excellence Scholarship that much better. So,
Wow.
so it's a motion to approve.
Very good, and very, we want to recognize that young man, and at this time, I would, there's a motion on the floor to approve the Academic Excellence Scholarship recipient.
So
As-
moved.
Very good.
Second.
Second, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much, Keith.
Thank you.
Youth options,
Don't have any at the moment.
okay, no. youth
Which is,
options.
it's going through a transition, and we should probably put that on as an agenda. We could talk about that at some future point of where that's at if you wanted to. But youth options will no longer exist as youth options come June 30th, so.
So I think the board, I think we talked about last year, the last couple of years, we've had this option called course options. So it's youth options, course options. And now they're moving away to another model, which is more like youth options, I think. You have anything else you want to add to it?
Yeah, I mean,
It just
that
pro-
has some youth option elements to it, mostly on who pays.
Yeah, and the
and
district
who
pays.
The
We
district
pay.
pays. But in essence, what we're able to do for those students that, have interest in a class or eligible for a class that we're not able to provide on site, we are financially responsible to pay for them to take that in a different manner, maybe at Mid-State, maybe online. Different
Yeah.
options are out there.
Even attending UW, a UW.
Even a UW
campus,
school.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to recognize that for those students that have that need for that and have the opportunity to do it, the availability is there. So
It's-
I'm looking forward to the updates on
And
how
it's
it.
one of the options for receiving college credit while in high school. But
Yep.
just one of, I mean, really,
One of
at some
many.
point, it would be really good to get on an agenda with, talking about those different ways that a student can earn
That would be a good
college
topic,
credit
yeah.
in high
Yep.
school.
Yep, because every dollar is important that we can keep here.
And we
Thank
do
you.
have more and more kids using it, so it's growing every year. A lot of our virtual kids use it, so that's something we can put on for maybe a showcase.
Very good. And the NHS course description book was provided as informational. Again, a well put together book. These are the courses that are going to be available.
Yeah, and that's, Mrs. Severs and Mrs. Kreider certainly are the ones that put the book together. This year, the cover was designed by a student. A couple of things that I would like to highlight, though, just to, and it actually ties into exactly what we were just talking about a minute ago. In the course description book for next year, we'll actually have a total of five new courses that students can earn college credit for. 3 of them will be transcripted courses that we're looking, planning to transcript. Those are still working through the process as far as with the way that process works. But looking at health and wellness is a transcripted course, marketing will be a transcripted course, oral and interpersonal communications will be a transcripted course, and then AP US Government and Politics will be a new course, and then AP Biology will be 2 new courses. Plus we'll have AP Lit and Comp, which is coming in. We've started a rotation where one year we have AP Lit and Comp, and then the following year we have AP Language and Comp. So those are options for students in their junior, senior year to take Lit and Comp and Language and Comp. So a couple of just different little new parts there. Certainly as people have asked for more AP, more dual credit, AP and transcripted, those are some things that we've definitely been looking at and been able to add a significant number in the last.
In total, how many?
years. In total, how many have we added?
AP now, kids have an option of 10, isn't it?
Well, we have, so 10 AP courses, which is pretty substantial. When I was looking, I was on the Lincoln website, and I think they had 14, and at Nekoosa, a much different size school, we have 10. So, that we will have.
Yeah.
Some of those are in rotation, so that it's an A year, B year. As we've gotten that into full cycle, some courses are offered in an A year, some courses are offered in a B year, so that we can get that. But, and then actually the transcripted courses are an even better deal for students because there they don't have to take the exam like they do with an AP. So a couple of highlights.
I know there's a lot of hard work that goes into that, you know, on the development, and it's a resource issue. And that's a tough thing, and that's one thing that I think we as a board are always interested in, is if we're having to say no due to resources or limit, you know, availability due to resources. So any feedback on that, on things we have to say no to, you know, would be appreciated, you know, and I know you guys take that into account in planning for next year. But the students have a lot of choices to make in the upcoming months. So thank you for that, and thank you. Any other questions on the NH description book?
No, thanks for the update, though.
Yep,
Appreciate
very
it.
much appreciate it, and the hard work. Thank those young ladies. Next we have GP-10, which is board governance policy, and it essentially covers what we refer to as conflict of interest on behalf of the board members. And we as board members have fiduciary responsibilities when it comes to conflicts with regards to personal financial interest or circumstances that may involve personal gain or gain for immediate family members. This was emailed to all board members. No exceptions were noted. At this point, in the absence of any questions or comments, I would like to put a motion on the floor for approval of GP-10, conflict of interest.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. And now we are to OE12, discipline. I want to make one comment. In Brian Mahan's absence, just to reinforce the strength of last week's conversation, he indicated that just in what he heard last week from you gentlemen, satisfied what he needed to know about discipline. And that's a vote of confidence on his behalf, so thank you. Okay, with regards to OE12, last year when we reviewed it in March, we had noted six exceptions. These exceptions have been addressed and worked on by the team throughout the year. At this point, Terry, how would you like to proceed?
Well, I'm going to read what the policy states, and then what we'd like to do, and this really ties in with what Brian started at the beginning of the meeting, and then having the schools each share 2 or 3 talking points that really represents the work that has happened since we met last and really went over this last year. So the policy states the district administrator shall develop and consistently enforce discipline policies to maintain a safe and effective learning environment for all students. So the district administrator may not allow student behavior to negatively impact school climate. And then it further states the district administrator will ensure staff are trained in proactive and reactive practices, so positive school climate strategies are used frequently and consistently throughout the school, and there are strategies which are alternatives to exclusionary discipline, which MTSS talks a lot about. Also ensure that all policies and procedures regarding discipline are enforced consistently using reasonable judgment. Appropriately involve relevant stakeholders and staff in developing student discipline policy, and then assure that teachers, students, and parents are informed of the disciplinary expectations of students. So at this time, we'd like to ask the principals to share just some highlights over the last year of the work that's been done in the schools that really complement the work that each of the MTSS teams are doing.
Sure, I can start. At Humke Elementary School, one of the things we're really committed to having all the kids do is to learn and view and then demonstrate CARES. CARES is an acronym: cooperation, assertion, responsibility, empathy, and self-control. And that's something that we want all kids to lead through, and that's a thread that'll run this way as the kids move through. And so we just continue to work on that and develop that process and just continue to grow in that area. With that, we're also spending a lot of energy in really creating those that sense of community through morning meeting and other rituals, and just developing that culture. And that's just something we're committed to help kids feel safe and secure. Another preventative thing that we're doing too is helping kids to learn how to self-regulate. And we spent a lot of energy this past year on developing what we call the safe place, and that's where kids who are feeling stressed, they can take time into a place, and they learn how to essentially diffuse their anger and take it in that. So that's something we're working on. We also continue to develop, and a shout out to Rod and Mikey and the work they're doing. Rod is our school counselor, and Mikey is our teacher assistant behavior interventionist, doing things to be responsive and support teachers, but also doing things that are preventative to help support our kids, and just take action like helping kids to work through an intervention that they need to support themselves, so they get on the business of learning.
Thank you, John, and if I may, I'd just like to really thank you for the documentation that you provided with regards to the parent handbook and your emotional plan and the work that you do with your teachers. It's a very in-depth document and good work. I want to also recognize that the work that's being done around discipline is representative of feedback that we've received through the
Strategic planning meetings?
strategic planning meetings and also the board forum, and that this body of knowledge has been shared, and it's actually been a very good year. We had those meetings scheduled between November and December, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
We were able to meet with all buildings, and that feedback, and not only from the community, but staff as well. So all of this is coming together, and to see this good work happening, I really want to thank you, gentlemen. So, Mr. Sprain, thank you.
Thank you again. Shout out to Keith for getting it started.
Yeah.
You get a lot of mileage out of that. 20 more years you'll be here. That is good. Thank you, John.
Well, and a lot of things that Mr. Sprain had mentioned are transitioning into the middle school in a developmentally appropriate way. So, morning meeting transitions away from a little bit of the morning meeting structure into an advisory structure at the middle school. And there's kind of a hybrid in 4th and 5th grade, and it breaks off into full-fledged advisory in 6th grade for sure. So the MTSS committee, looking at these developmentally appropriate pieces of responsive classroom, the MTSS committee has identified 5 of them as focus areas as where we're going to go moving forward. And these have been shared and discussed with staff as well. And those are the advisory, space and time, which is that opportunity to self-regulate, interactive modeling, which is not just telling students how to do something, but showing them how to do it, common grade level expectations, and then common area expectations. And those are all things that we've revisited throughout the year. As recently as February 9th, we had a number of different professional learning opportunities on a number of those 5 focus areas. And those are really a lot of proactive strategies, and we have to have that balance because there are some things that are still that those proactive measures aren't going to address, and that's where our behavior management plan comes in, and it starts off with a description of the proactive measures in responsive classroom and moves into some possible consequences for certain infractions that had been developed by community. A couple board members were there, some retired teachers were there, a student was a part of that, and so that's what we're using as a guide when those infractions occur. And the focus on all of those things has made an impact on our number of office referrals, dropping significantly from last year. And I believe that number's around 32 to 36%, somewhere in there. I can't remember exactly what it is. But. So. Questions on the middle school?
Just a thanks really for the opportunity to be on that committee this summer and to actually in last week's discussion on Thursday to get to know a little bit more about it, to be an ambassador and the work that's been done. You know, in the support, you know, this year you've dedicated substantial resources to addressing a lot of those tier 1, tier 2, you know, with the behavior. And you've done a good amount of work with a very difficult group. They're all great though. Pat also served on that committee, and Pat, do you share the same feelings I do?
Yeah, I look at that and I look at the way that went about. You guys took it step by step. There was a lot of talk going, there was a lot of playing the devil's advocate. Well, what if this happens? What if that happens? Where's that gonna go? Where's this gonna lead to? The kid gets caught chewing gum 12 times in a row, does he get put up for expulsion? You know, and it's like, no, that's not the way it works, and you guys did a great job on it.
Well, in a conversation that thank you, Mr. Rashevsky and Mr. Kesey and the board, but a conversation that Mr. Thomas and I had about that was the power of that informational meeting last week, you know, and to really arm the board with knowledge of what is happening within the buildings, we thought was extremely beneficial and a really good use of that time. And the comments that the board had made around, you know, being able to talk to stakeholders about the different things that are happening was extremely powerful, and we felt very well supported in that endeavor. And so anything we can do to help bridge that communication piece, we're definitely willing to do.
One thing that I think I mentioned during one was we needed to change the atmosphere, and I think that's happened. I think the atmosphere has changed at EMS for the better.
It's not done yet.
Well, I know, but it's getting it's changed, trust me, it's changed, but you're right. There's always work to do. Yep.
Okay, Mr. Johnson.
Well, at the high school, we have our discipline plan is really embedded within our student parent handbook. And then, you know, this year, we talked about last week, Link Crew is certainly one piece that we've added in that has been a huge part of helping our freshmen transition into the high school and freshman seminar. Advisory, and Nick could actually speak to this, you and I have talked about, we've had the first 2-year run of advisory staying the same, which has been a big change for students developing those relationships with a teacher. So that's been, I think, an important piece too. You know, we always have child development, adolescent development on our side, in that, you know, certainly obviously working at Humke, you know, a 4-year-old, 5-year-old is a much different person than a 14-year-old, and a 14-year-old is a much different person, or an 18-year-old is a much different person than they were as a 14-year-old. And so that maturation process really is a big part of what we have, you know, and certainly it works all the way through the system. But, so we really focus on, you know, the social skill development. You know, if you look at a lot of our instructional practices that are going on in the different classrooms around collaboration, communication, you know, certainly how to work as a team. You know, those are pieces that are coming up and that we're working more and more on. You know, another big piece that is an area we need to grow more, we have, you know, grown certainly over the last few years in the area of mental health and working with mental illness. You know, a dramatic number of people who suffer from mental illness see it first start to develop in the teen years and in the adolescence. And so, you know, that's an area that, although not exactly tied into this topic, is certainly a huge piece of what we're working on and where we need to be focused in many ways at the high school level. So those are, you know, some of the things, certainly on communication and closing that loop, if you will. That's been one of Mrs. Kautzer's goals this year, and she's been working very hard on making sure that she's communicating faster with teachers and then also with parents when there are discipline things that come up. The other part too that I would just say is a huge thing that I really would want to point out is the teachers that we have, you know, I'm only speaking for the high school because that's where I'm at, but the teachers really do a lot building respectful relationships with the students. And, you know, and I would say that our teachers, you know, working with our freshmen, I always look at our freshmen as our most vulnerable group. And the teachers, you know, really have done an excellent job building relationships with those freshmen, helping the freshmen transition into the high school. And so, and freshman seminar has been a big part of that, and certainly that's, you know, Mrs. Bradle has been a fantastic person to have working with our freshmen in English 9 and in freshman seminar. She gets to see them twice a day. So, Nick, you want to add, or?
I would say I can even see it in the freshmen. I had a conversation last week with one. It's the difference between when I was and them is clearly there. There's been growth.
That's good to see, yeah. Good to hear.
Very good to hear, and, you know, a lot of those practices, and Mrs. Bradle and, you know, your staff, we want to thank very much. And, you know, gentlemen, I want to thank you for giving us this review today. And it's a much deeper subject that, you know, we were able to talk about. And I would like to also, you know, in respecting policy governance, you know, all of this communication started with Terry. You know, we as a board empower you, Terry, and that feedback is provided to you, and then you work with your team. So,
Well, and-
you get the credit for this too, buddy, okay?
We'll take credit as a
You know,
team, the
as a
staff,
team.
the admin team, the school board.
Yeah. We
So-
have to honor that system, and I think we've done a good job of it. You know, we're in our second year of policy governance, and we're getting better at it every day. And that's exciting. Any questions from board members on
OE12.
OE12? Can I see your OE12? The one item that we have to talk about, you know, last year we identified 6 exceptions with regards to this policy. From my recollection last week, in our discussions and looking at it, the only exception that I believe that I need consensus from today, gentlemen, we didn't, you know, this is where we talk about it, is the communication aspect of really communicating. And a lot of this is new, so it's not a big thing. And when we find exceptions, it's not to be construed as, you know, this is just the worst thing in the whole world. It's improvements on the process. And communication seemed to be a common theme through, you know, from parents, from students, and from community understanding our approach to discipline and our approach to social and emotional learning, which is a huge shift from where we were. And, you know, I think the communication aspect is really the only exception that I can find, is that we need to do more work with that communication, and what that work will entail. You know, we empower our district administrator to work on that.
We're well underway. We've got a plan.
Well, we haven't found the exception yet.
Well, we heard about it.
Okay. I guess is there any other items that you could think of, gentlemen?
Well, the only other item that I think we talked about was the training of substitutes.
Okay.
That one.
These were the exceptions
That one would be something that probably needed a little bit more.
Continue to look at.
and that might even fall under communication with.
Part of it certainly.
You know, because I think communication involves new staff, it involves guest teachers, it involves parents, students. It's a far-ranging subject. But I would, you know, do we want to? Did we find through our conversations last week that had not been closed?
I thought that was something that we mentioned.
Okay.
I remember the.
Right, there was a lot of discussion on that, especially teachers that come in the middle of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's a hard thing to do, but maybe some process work. So, other than those 2 exceptions, and very plain language, nothing critical. Those are the two exceptions that I think we need to note with regards to OE 12. And other than that, if we have consensus on that, gentlemen, I'd like to make a motion to approve the operational expectation. I'd like to put a motion on the floor for the operational expectation OE 12 OE 12 discipline.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Can I just ask a quick question? So we had talked about capturing the strengths too. So what's the procedure for that? Do we want to highlight some of the strengths, or can we just make the tool available?
I think we need to make the tool available. This is something that, when looking at how the board does its annual evaluation for
Yeah.
yourself, that we noted that our system of documentation, we weren't, we find weaknesses, but we also find many strengths.
Sure.
And those strengths need to be noted. And I would like to thank and congratulate Diana Martinson for working with me and expanding that tool a little bit. Diana, thank you very much. And what that tool allows us to do is look back at last year's exceptions, this year's, and we need to make a point of finding those strengths as we go through that review process. And I believe that when we get really good at this policy governance, when we note these exceptions,
Yeah.
we're going to note the
Strengths.
weakness, the strengths as well.
Yeah. And then by the end of the year, it's all there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So doing little pieces at a time.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you very much. At this time, we've reached the consent agenda. We have some employment on there. We do not have to discuss it. If anybody wishes to mention, they may.
Can I just make one note? Angelica Mathias is actually traveling primarily between Humke Elementary School and Alexander Middle School, because she's working with Talma, who's another one of our ELL educational assistants, and Talma's covering primarily the high school. So just so you're aware.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Andrew Hoffmeister, he left for a short time and then he missed us so much he came right back before we even had a chance to fill it. So he's back at the middle school, right?
Yeah, we're happy to have him.
He's always got a good attitude, don't he?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
And we'd like to, recognize and thank those other individuals that are part of our team now too. So, thank you very much. We do have one retirement. An individual that's been with the district for a long time and has given very much of her time and expertise and hard work. Keith?
Boy, I worked with Sue when I was a teacher in the district, and she was actually one of the first people I met, helping me to figure out what I needed to do with spelling. Then I worked with her when I was at Humke extensively, when I was at Humke and then now at the high school. And Sue is a wealth of knowledge. She is a person who she can take any project and it will come in to perfection. I mean, she is just amazing in her ability to dot the I's and cross the T's on projects. And she is going to be a person who will be missed, just in terms of there are going to be a lot of things over the course of next year that we wonder, well, how did that get done? Well, that was Sue that did it. And so she's managed the Title I budgets for
Many years.
You have no idea how many years she's been doing that. And, and someone who's connected with a lot of people at DPI, a lot of people through the Title I Association. And so
Reading specialist.
yeah, she is going to be greatly missed.
If I could speak to that as well, I've had extensive opportunity to work with Sue whenever we're doing any state testing, she's in the middle of making sure that that works. As we're working with, her role as a reading specialist, if we need to, when we're doing the little things, like how do we get the books in place, how do we go ahead and get the organization of units, how do we pull these things together? Simply put, Sue is one of those people that she looks for the little things and makes sure they're done. And you think you're doing more than you actually are because she's along with you. And I certainly appreciate everything that she's done so much. And she, again, institutional knowledge, the stuff behind the scenes is quintessential Sue because she's a teacher's teacher. She knows how to get it done.
And she also, in addition to her literacy coaching, she's also served as kind of a mentor for new teachers, especially in the area of literacy. And I can speak for that specifically at AMS, who really gives them other points and helps them out with areas. And she's not afraid to get her hands dirty in jumping in and helping organize a bookshelf or tear down a bulletin board or whatever it is that they need done. She's there to help them, and that is really a powerful piece that we're going to miss at the middle school.
She's affected many students and employees' lives. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you.
Donations.
You want me to read those?
I was going to let Mr. Houston. if he'd
Okay,
like.
yeah.
Sure. United Church of Christ donated a bag of hats, mittens, and socks. And Nekoosa Lions donated $250 to the National Honor Society for the Chili for Charity. Backpack for Kids donations, Sacred Heart Collections, $145. Bethlehem Lutheran, $45. United Church of Christ, $100. And then there was an anonymous donation of $210, all for Backpack for Kids. So we truly thank everyone for their donations. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Doug. At this time, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion. Second.
We have a motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Future meetings and agenda items. Our next scheduled meeting is March 15th, and this is a policy meeting. It's to discuss the operational expectations that are on the board monitoring calendar for the March 20th meeting. Terry's going to look those up.
Is there?
What are we reviewing next month, Terry?
March. Self-directed thinkers, that's a results goal.
That's an easy one.
And then we've got GP11.
GP11. I think, let's just leave that on the calendar at this time in case there is something that we need to address as a board. But I'm anticipating we may indeed cancel that meeting. The only thing I'm thinking, but we can't do it without you, Doug. Without you, Dave. We got to do some more work. And then our next board meeting. And then we have some other board work. Terry, do you want to speak on this? Other board work?
We're going to have an informational, we'll have some information.
This is just going to be on the agenda for next month?
Yep.
Very good. Understood.
But do we want, and maybe I'll work with Keith on the new youth options, course options, and get a board presentation together on that.
That CWSC contract, does that need to be approved in the March meeting, or is that an ongoing discussion?
It doesn't need to be approved, but the council is working on different amendments to it.
Very good.
Just an update.
Update.
Sure.
Thank you. I owe somebody some feedback on some items he gave me about a month ago. Our professor.
Oh,
Mr. Breen?
Richard Breen. Okay. I really appreciate everybody's time, commitment, and efforts they've made to bring us where we are today. And at this time, Mr. Mahan would be
happy
for what?
Can I
Yes,
add one
Brian.
thing before we motion? Just a reminder, next week, Wednesday, we do have our child development days coming up. And a lot of times families think that's just for 4K and 5K registration, but if you have a 3-year-old child as well, please bring them because we like to monitor their development to make sure they are prepared for 4K. So if you have a child 3 years to registering for 5K, please bring them in for child development days next week, Wednesday. And if you would like to schedule an appointment, please call Tiffany at the Humke Elementary office.
715-886-8010.
There you go.
All
And if we're gonna
right.
give shout outs, I'm just going to give one more plug for the musical coming up on March 9th at 7 p.m. and then on March 10th, Saturday, March 10th at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. The Music Man, tickets available online, or you can get tickets by calling the Nekoosa High School office at 715-886-8060.
Nice.
Thank you.
Very good.
Okay.
Show ticks for you.
We have a motion.
Ticks.
Motion for adjourn. We have a second. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Meeting adjourned.
Right at 7:30, look at that.
We missed.
That? Why?
One of you- one of you-